the impact that COVID-19 has had on Zambia across sectors. So you're at liberty to join in the discussion as we get to brainstorm right on the program from right about now through to 11. So you're at liberty to get interactive with us and ask questions. The best way you can is by calling on 0960 200 490. You can also get interactive with us by sending the WhatsApp message, and then you can also connect with us by calling or sending those standard text messages. We'll definitely appreciate your involvement on today's program. All right, now, Mr. Dodia, let's talk about the tourism sector. It hasn't been spared by COVID-19. Before we got into this segment, I did allude to the fact that you drive through the major hotels in the central business district of Lusaka. They're all closed, and these are hotels. All right, Hotel Intercontinental, Southern Sun. Then there's Radisson Blue. There's the Taj Pamodzi. These are hotels that get a lot of clients from the American Embassy. From all the embassies. Talk of the embassies. They receive people coming in for different kind of works, and all those have had their trips cancelled for special people that initially were supposed to have traveled at this time. So this is just a tip of an iceberg, but there's more to it, because Zambia is not basically just Lusaka in terms of tourism. There's everywhere you could talk of where there have been cancellations at the hand of tour operators.
Yeah, Lorenzo, you're right. And in fact, I would say that the hardest hit industry because of COVID-19 is actually the tourism industry.
Okay.
Because it's the hospitality industry in general, which includes tourism, that sees groups of people congregating in one room, whether it's a restaurant or whether it's a bar or whether it's a nightclub, a hotel. People are congregating, and where people are congregating, COVID-19 is the place for the spread of the virus. So of course the shutting down of bars and restaurants and clubs and so forth has had a huge negative impact on the hospitality industry. And yes, some bars and restaurants can shut down, they can do takeaways, they can do deliveries, but the hotel industry, where you have got an infrastructure that needs to generate an income, is really much more difficult to deal with. Besides that, at the time when the COVID-19 virus was being registered in Zambia as something to be concerned about, many of our expatriate people here left the country. And they left the country for one specific reason, that their insurance, their health insurance, which they have, does not cover the threats that COVID-19 was making to their well-being. So you find that people from Norway, Sweden, Germany, France, who are working in Zambia, many of them just got on a plane and immediately went home, because they went home to a place where they know that the health insurance would take care of them. The health insurance would not be able to take care of them here in Zambia. And of course, if you expand that argument, it means that people from abroad who want to come to Zambia will say, if I go to Zambia and I get an infection in Zambia, what is going to happen to me? So people were reluctant to come to Zambia for that reason. So meaning that your hotel business in Zambia, the tourism business in Zambia, is now only catering for Zambians, for people who are here in Zambia. And then of course we have got our own challenges, and saying that, so one really is not surprised that the hotel industry is more or less at a shutdown. They're not making any money. They're not able to pay their workers. They're not able to run their expenses, which, for example, electricity, water bills, and so forth, security bills, which you have to pay whether you have whether you're operational or not. You have to continue paying those bills. And then, of course, this extends to the tourism enterprises themselves, because hotels are just part of it. But if you look at the parks, the national parks, the areas where we are getting tourism revenue, that's not happening at all. People are not going fishing, people are not going hunting, people are not going sightseeing, they're not going animal viewing, because they're just not able to get around for various reasons.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely the tourism and hospitality industry is taking a huge knock in terms of revenue, and they're really in recession.
Mm-hmm.
And even at the end of this, if we were to come out of this coronavirus pandemic and we get back to life normal, the life normal will mean that you don't have to wear a mask. It means you don't have to sanitize that much anymore and that you can move around. But life normal for the tourism industry will take another year or two to rebuild, maybe more, because they would have suffered. You are still accruing salaries to them. And yet there's been no revenue being generated. So a lot of these businesses will be carrying huge debts into the forthcoming 1 or 2 years in order to clear up the bills that they would have generated during the shutdown period. Because we are in shutdown. We may not be in lockdown, but we're definitely in shutdown. Yes.
Wow. All right. 09. COVID-19 has brought a lot of disadvantages and problems, but we're looking forward to combat it. But I think this virus can't survive in hot countries. Our motive here in Chipata is to destroy it completely by doing the right things. But do you recall what Jesus said about presenter? Don't get extremely surprised with what is happening on earth. Enoch, this is from Enoch within Chipata. Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Enoch, for your text message. Let me get on to the next comment. This one says, "Good morning, Lorenzo. You're doing great. Ask Mr. Dodia on why government has allowed or has allowed our kwacha to fall from Kalyondo in Kapirimposhi. I mean, the free falling of our kwacha." All right. So Kalyondo, Mr. Dodia wants to find out that. What explanation would you have for the free falling kwacha? It's around 19 kwacha to $1 at the moment. How do you respond to Kalyondo in Kapiri?
Well, this is really a question of supply and demand, and a question of contraction of business. We start with the supply and demand. You will be aware that for the last 2 years, government has introduced various policies and provisions for collecting taxes from the mining industry. As far back as 2018, when the 2019 budget was being formulated, government had made pronouncements that mineral royalty taxes would go up, that a new tax would be introduced, which was the excise duty on the importation of concentrates, copper concentrates coming in from Congo, specifically coming into Zambia for processing, which means the mines would have to pay a tax on that. Then the removal of value-added tax to be replaced by goods and services tax,
GST.
which the mining industry would not be exempted from. So already a quarrel was brewing between the mining sector and government. And it's very important to recognize this, because the mining sector is responsible for about 80% of our GDP. If we look at our export earnings, in a good year, we're exporting about 1 million tons of copper at $6,000 per ton. That's $6 billion out of a total export envelope of 8 billion. So that's a huge
lot of money.
That's a huge a lot
From
of
mining.
And so when the mining sector now gets into this quarrel with government, and as far back as the end of 2018, when the 2019 budget was being presented, the mining industry already started getting into a situation where they were saying, we're going to lay off workers, we're going to shut down certain operations, certain smelters were going to close down, and so forth and so forth. And this has continued during 2019. And the impact of this has been the falling rate of the kwacha against the dollar. Because the mining industry is responsible for the bulk of our foreign exchange earnings that come into our banks to be made available to Zambians to buy. The dollars you are buying in the bureaus, in the banks, you are buying mining money, mining export money. Now, if the mining companies are in this quarrel with government and they are reducing the money they bring into the economy, it means you get a shortage of forex. Zambians are now fighting for forex, and the rate of the dollar starts to go up because of supply and demand. Shortage of supply, shortage of demand, but shortage of supply, but a heavy demand for it. And so we began to see that happening. And this now became even more prominent around the middle of 2019 when government moved in to take over KCM. And that just escalated would I say, the division between the mining industry and government. And we began to see the kwacha even accelerate in terms of deterioration. At the beginning of 2019, we were seeing an exchange rate of something like 11 kwacha to a dollar, 11, 12. By the end of 2019, it had hit 14. And now, with the advent of the coronavirus and new challenges in the mining industry, as you can see, some of the mining companies now in Kitwe and Mufulira are looking to shut down operations. We are beginning to see a contraction in the mining business, and that contraction means less foreign currency coming into our country. So that is really a basic explanation for why we are seeing a runaway kwacha now in terms of deterioration, because there are no other revenue streams of foreign currency that are coming in to replace the copper earnings. And also the Bank of Zambia has a limited capacity to manage this. Normally what the Bank of Zambia would do, if there's a shortage of foreign currency, they would pump some foreign currency into the economy to stabilize it. But this can only be done for 1 month, 2 months. More than that, the Bank of Zambia has no capacity to control the situation. The situation ought to be controlled by business and productivity in the private sector, in the business sector. And so this phenomena we are seeing is something that was predictable. The rate at which it was going to go was unpredictable because coronavirus has now escalated a commitment that government has to make. It comes with courage that government has to have in order to control what I would call an irresponsible flight of foreign currency out of our country. We've talked about this before, and I'd just like to repeat it, that when you look at Africa's most impressive economy is South Africa. And in South Africa, they have a basic rule, Toyotas to Zambia, exporting trucks, exporting whatever. The South African Revenue Service watches and says, an export has been done for $20,000. Where is the $20,000 payment for this export?
For that export.
In a South African bank. We want to see it. We will not even allow that export to be paid for by a South African. No. A friend in South Africa cannot pay it. Whether it's in rands or in foreign currency, we don't agree. It must come from outside where this product went, let a corresponding equivalent amount of money come into the economy. And that is accounting for foreign exchange revenues. It's also accounting for export earnings. And in Zambia, we don't do it. Our mining companies export all the copper. They bring what is only necessary to service their domestic requirements. So in the last, 10, 20 years. But that is the kind of step that we need to take. And I am sure that if our government presents such an argument to the IMF, to the World Bank, we would get support from the international community that from now on, any export which you make from Zambia, that invoice, export invoice that you've done, must be cleared by export earnings coming into Zambia. And if this money comes into Zambia, we will see our kwacha stabilize within a very short space of time. We will see our kwacha gain strength in a very short space of time, because we would be able to see that foreign currency is abundant in our economy, meaning that the demand on the foreign currency is going to be less because it's available. And secondly, it means that Zambians who are accessing this money are going to China and wherever you want to, South Africa, and importing products and machinery and raw material, and they are building their businesses in Zambia to avoid this dependency on the copper mine taxes, because many Zambians who would become prosperous would be the ones who would be paying the taxes to finance our budget. So this is really the dilemma we find ourselves in. And of course, this has been exasperated by the fact that 30% of our national budget now is expected to be funded by foreign financing and grants. It's too much. You can't be begging for 30% of your budget. The other challenge we have, even in our 2020 budget, is that it's allocated towards domestic debt servicing, and our domestic debt was around 60 billion kwacha. So really, we are not even trying to pull our own people out of debt to say, let's pay our Zambian suppliers so that at least they will generate revenue and business within Zambia. We are focused on paying our foreign debt, which was as a consequence of those international euro bonds that were issued in the last 6-7 years. So really, this is not something that we should say it came suddenly. We created an economy where the kwacha.
Now, since we talked a little bit about copper mines and all, now there's a screaming headline in today's Zambia Daily Mail, Mr. Dodia, where Glencore, the majority shareholder in Mopani Copper Mines, has gone ahead to place its Kitwe and Mufulira operations under care and maintenance, and this effectively sends 11,000 workers home. There's been a furore, there's an outcry from the Mine Workers Union. When you look at the Times of Zambia, they're even saying, surrender the mines, another screaming headline. Now, do you ascribe to what is being captured in today's two daily papers, Mr. Dodia?
My view is that we must not get emotional about businesses and investors and private sector. It's very clear that there's no mining company that wants to put its operations on care and maintenance just for the fun of it. To be paying workers, keep them at home, and so forth.
It's a business decision.
It's a business decision. And sometimes these business decisions sometimes have a political, would I say, angle to it. Because when you have a sector like the mining sector, which is representing 80% of our GDP, they become almost like another political party in the country. And if collectively they decide that they want to shrink their business, it means they're holding the government of the day to ransom. If you don't remove these taxes, we are going to fire 11,000 people. If you don't do this, we are going to shut down operations. And you cannot have a situation where a sector, whether it's mining or it's agriculture or it is tourism or manufacturing, holding the government to ransom. But there's no need for us to be guessing and trying to figure out what is the issue with Mopani Copper Mines, what is the issue with KCM, because we'll spend the whole day talking about it and everybody will have a different opinion. The one thing we can do as a nation is saying that mining is a strategic industry for this economy. And if there's a mining company that chooses to shut down, go on care and maintenance because it feels that it can no longer run a viable business in Zambia, then you say fine. But from a sovereign state perspective, you say, well, in that case, you may not be the right investor to be investing in our country. So you make a choice. You know, if you feel you cannot run the business and you want to put in care and maintenance, I think it's time we allowed somebody else to take over. Somebody who sees a future in the Zambian mining industry in Zambia. Maybe an investor from Brazil like Vale or one of those might decide, okay, we are prepared to take over this mine and we're prepared to make it run because we believe that it's possible. The people who are there may not believe it's possible. And you just make a business decision. There's no need for us to be quarreling and saying, no, they are being unfair, they're not doing the right thing, because they are making a business decision. But the country can also make a business decision and say, well, if you cannot run, we respect your decision. But we have a sovereign decision-making power here as government, that as an investor, we now do not find you to be a good investor in our country, the kind of investor that we need. So can you pack up your bags and leave? And there's another investor who's willing to take over and make this thing successful. Because even though we're hearing that copper prices have fallen, you know, under $6,000, now they're 5,000 something, maybe even in the upper 4,000s, 4,700, somewhere there. The mining industry is still very profitable. 4,700, 4,500 is not
easy money.
Small money. There was a time when the mining industry was selling copper at $2,500 a ton. This is double we are talking about. So really, It's just that sometimes some of these mines have learned to be fat and lazy. They've not been able to make the best of their investments in Zambia. If they're not prepared to work, let other people who are prepared to work come on board. It's also the way the mining industry re-strategized themselves. If you look at the mining in the 1970s and 1980s, mining companies ran the mines. The mining companies today are not running the mines; they are subcontracting. One would even wonder, how can you have 2 flights a day from Dola to Johannesburg? Who are these people who are going to Johannesburg and coming every day? It's probably the expatriates.
Absolutely.
The expatriates who are running the mines and wanting to live in Johannesburg but work in Lusaka. So they want to be in Lusaka Monday to Friday, and then the weekend they go back home, because the majority of mining operations may be subcontracted to companies that are doing the job on behalf of the mines. But that means there's a cost. The profit that you could have been making as a mine, you are now passing it on to a subcontractor, and you're saying, let them make money also, because I want to have a holiday to go home over the weekend to South Africa. So, in other words, the mining industry has become very expensive to run as an industry because of the intermediaries that have been introduced.
The subcontracting.
Yes. And so we need to do an analysis and find out what is really happening in the mining industry. Because if we can get investors who are going to come in and truly mine, truly run the mining business as a business, we may find that they will find that even with the current copper prices, they can still run a very profitable business. And those are the people we need, not the ones who are going to say, well, we want to take it easy, we want things to run on a go slow because it suits us. Investment in Zambia should suit Zambia, not necessarily only suit the investor, because it's a partnership. Both partners should be happy with the arrangement which is there. So I think that there's a great opportunity for government to relook at the relationships in the mining industry, how we are managing it, and what kind of investors we want. Remember that in the 1980s, we only had one investor literally in the mining industry, and that was Anglo-American Corporation. They owned all our mines. They said, no, Zambia is no longer a good place to do any business. We want to shut down and leave. And they left. Did we fold and die? No, we didn't. In fact, it gave us an opportunity to attract other investors to come into the mining industry. Now we've got investors from China, we've got investors from South Africa, from New Zealand, from Canada, from America. We have investors from every part of the world, and the competition amongst these investors has actually made the copper mining industry very successful in the last 10 to 20 years after Anglo-American Corporation left. So definitely we must continue on that trend, the trend of free market economics, the trend of free trade, where if an investor is just finding it very difficult to do business in Zambia, please pack up and go. Give a chance to other people who can make it happen. Anglo-American got tired. They packed up and left. Others came in and made a success. And I'm sure we can repeat that process.
Let me get a few calls now. 0960 200 490. Here we go. You're through to ChatBack.
Good morning, madam.
Hansel, good morning to you.
Good morning, thank you. Yes, you have a nice topic. One thing which important we miss so much in our nation, that's like the rich country. But the only problem we have, this selfish investors who come in our nation and trying to bring, to get profit, and from there they will not see the important things which is important from our nation, but they try to take advantage. I don't know, maybe I think the government doesn't have much power to be able to control this investor. Because the investor comes in your nation and you try to make their own policy and begin to implement the citizens. That's why we found even in this small company, you found the investors that is created. And you found there's not even any protection. That's why we take advantage of that. An investor comes in the nation and making the owner of the nation to suffer, but the investor are benefiting. And you found the government also, why that we are protecting the foreigners who have come in the nation, and instead of protecting the citizens. It's because my policy, I think this is the time to move in and to empower the Zambia who are doing this, all these problems will not happen. But the only problem we are trying to kill our own Zambia business who are trying to rise up and trying to give that is much opportunity to the foreigners. And when they come and they'll try to see and they'll see our weaknesses and they'll try to use the weaknesses and they can't be able even to help, they're not helping us at all. You get into a thing, that is the 2000 years up to now, that is how much money they have made. They know that they have made a lot of money and they try now to bring the people are going to suffer. It's the Zambian people. It's not them because they have already made a lot of money. This is the time now which the government needs to shift. Let them focus be upon the Zambian people, to empower the Zambian people, to be able to do these businesses which are costing money, so that the money should remain on it. How the other nations are able to do it? Although the investor comes to them, can you think that the person goes to China and do the investment you want to this person to shake it? Because most of them empower their own businesses. If you see even an example, what is happening to French people, it's only that the Zambian, that the China, they'll start the demand, and the China, the top down, they're trying to remove all the people, the French people, on that platform. You are trying to kill your own one, your own people, who is trying to rise up and to be able to contribute to the treasury. But you can't defend and you allow the foreigners to be able to work with that people. The government cannot speak, and we are watching. These are the same with the foreigners, which even these foreigners that come in the nation, they are able to see the weaknesses. They can bring it down in the state. The government the government cannot speak because we are protecting the foreigners and the Zambian people. If the government is in the right and you protect very well to know that the Zambians are important, that the people can be able to grow our economy, we should not be just depend on foreigners. Because the point which is a big man that is making, these are clear things that even those people in the authority, they don't know what is speaking. Let them, if they don't have this idea, let them study. Let them be able to advise to how to implement this certain thing. And the people that we have got the people who know how to control this, our economy. The thing now, even when I listen to him, starting from 30 hours to now, I've found that people want is leadership. These are politicians who doesn't have knowledge to be able to drive our economy. But these are the people which we have so much politicians, but we don't have people who have got to serve the nation, to be able to put the interest of the Zambian state, to see the nation how it's supposed to change. What these people when you hold them to the air, what they are speaking is contrary, more even business for this place. I think I don't know where our nation is going, but this is the time when the government should be able to see the importance of the Zambians, not just protecting the parents, because what is happening even in the private, if they can be able to take care with the technology, I'm telling you, we are seeing a lot of things, how these Zambians are mistreated within this global and within our state. With all this, I expect this woman to do what is necessary, which are happening in our country. You can't come to their nation and mistreat their people like that, because the first thing to have that choice, in our nation, to organize this thing. And I think, let the Zambia, let the government wake up.
Okay. All right. Thank you for coming through. All right. 0960-200-490. That is 0960-200-490. Let me get a call or two before Mr. Dodia comes on. It's 10:46 Central African time. Here we go with our next one. You're through to the program. Good morning. Is that Eldom Chunga?
Good morning, sir. Good to hear you.
Einstein. Okay, no, we'll tell them to keep 3 minutes. Mm-hmm.
The question that I have is, do we have right people in those states? The second question is, only the company that can only bring good revenue in this country. Those are my questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Elder Muchunga, leading by example, being candid. All right. So please let us make our contributions brief. Let me get one more. 0960 200 490. That is 0960 200 490. You're through to the program. You're through to the program.
Yes, hello.
Yes, your name, please.
This is Mr. calling you from Soroti.
Mishek in Solwezi. Please go ahead.
Yes, I want to express my displeasure on government. Why should the government fail to impose the mental laws which they have? How can they invest the government to our country and serve our mental laws? When the government is just there, teaching, watching them going ahead and destroying these mental laws. If it was a Zambia, the police would have moved in quickly to arrest that person. But since those who are doing that, they are falling investors. We are watching them. This is very bad. Look what the Chinese investors. They are here victimizing our own people and the government can't do anything. This is the time that we should change our mindset. Let us protect our own structures and leave these foreigners. These foreigners will come and they will pass, they go. But if we leave smart investment in Zambia or to our fellow Zambian people, things will be alright. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming through. All right, Mr. Dodia, what you make of the three calls?
Well, I think the most of the complaints are that foreign investors are coming into Zambia, taking advantage of our people, misusing our people,
Mhm.
not contributing. And I sympathize with the people that are calling.
Mhm.
But I also think we need to deal with it in a strategic way. We must remember that we moved away from the one party state, government and controlled economic model
Mhm.
to a free market economic model.
Mhm.
Now, it means also us, we need to change our thinking. During the days of the government controlled economic model, which was from 1964 up to 1991, so 20 odd years,
Mhm.
where we felt that government must be our protector, government must intervene, government should control the behavior of the investors and so forth. And this was prevalent during that time. And I think many of us bought into that idea. But at the same time, we wanted to see that our country must learn to free up resources and allow people's energies to build the economy and give people an opportunity to use their talents. But to do so, it was necessary also to change the thinking of how we manage the economy. And now here we are, more than 20 years into the free market economy from 1991 up to now, 2020. And we have to ask ourselves, what are the mechanisms that we should be using in order for the people of Zambia to get the best out of the investments that come in from the foreign investors? And for me, it's number one, it says that we must recognize that any investor, there's no investor who comes here to say, I like Zambians, I want to help them. I like Africa, I want to help Africa. I feel for the African people. No. And by design, when you create a business, you create a business to make money. And when that business which is created to make money comes to Zambia, it comes to Zambia to make money. And they will try to make the money in the easiest way possible. There's no crime that they are committing. This is what they are set up to do. It's what they are supposed to do. It is us who are managing this economy that need to put the parameters, the correct parameters for that kind of energy of a person who wants to make money to do the right things for this country. So if a foreign investor is abusing workers, it means your labor laws are not being enforced. You need to go to the Department of Labor and say, what are you doing? You are allowing people to be thinking, you have labor laws. Can you enforce those labor laws? If you don't enforce those labor laws, we kick you out and put new people to run this labor department. If the foreign investor is not paying taxes, you must go to ZRA and challenge ZRA to make sure that ZRA is collecting the taxes. So at the end of the day, the investor must work within the parameters set up by the government of the day. We should not be saying this is a good investor, this is a bad investor. No, we should just say this investor is doing what they are doing, and we as government, this is the benefit we're getting from this investor's activities in our country. So here we are. When we see, for example, that an investor is, for example, overcharging. Let's look at the issue of sanitizers today, which were 6 kwacha about a month ago. Now they are selling for 30 kwacha. It means the investors saw an opportunity to make money. Now, if we went by the rules of the first 20 years of independence of Zambia, where it was government-controlled economy, what the government was supposed to do is to immediately put price control and say you cannot sell that sanitizer more than 7 kwacha. Or go to a government-owned enterprise such as National Drug Company and say you make sanitizers and the government price for sanitizer is 3 kwacha. That's how we were dealing with it those days. In today's regime,
it's a free market
we can't use that technique. The technique now must be, oh, you are selling your sanitizer at 30 kwacha. Is there anybody else who can make sanitizer? We are licensing you to start manufacturing sanitizer as government. Want competition, the way we did with cement. Remember, cement was 100 kwacha a pocket. When a big investor came to challenge the ones who are here, it dropped to 50 kwacha. Same formula. Bring other investors to come on board here and make sanitizers, sell sanitizers, make masks, sell masks, and you find that at the end of the day, it is the consumer who is going to benefit out of it. But you can't say you are in a free market economic, but you want to use the regime, one-party state. No, you can't do that. You must use the techniques and strategies that a or rather a free trade economy would accept, and that is to introduce competition. Wherever you see there's a monopoly, introduce competition. In some cases, government might even finance that competition. Sanitizers here are selling at 30 kwacha. There's somebody who can make it at 6 kwacha. The Development Bank of Zambia, can you give them a loan? Let them start their business and let them compete with the existing people so that the Zambian consumer must get the benefit of competition. You see, that is the role of banks like Development Bank of Zambia, is to create an active, competitive business, vibrant business environment. You see what I mean? So I think that, the only biblically and, religiously, there are some people who sacrifice their lives for mankind. The Messiah, the prophets, they sacrifice themselves. Those are the people who sacrifice themselves to help us. The rest of the people who are here to make money. And therefore, you allow them to make money, but guide them. Use your laws to make sure that they're doing the right thing. Use the government's power to create more businesses in a particular sector to ensure that the public benefit from the competition. You can see, like the mobile phone industry, we've only got 3 service providers. It has been there for the last 10 years. And that is completely ridiculous. There should have been at least 5 or 6. And today, we would be paying 1 kwacha for 1 gigabyte of data, not the way we're paying 100 kwacha. You understand what I mean? So it's the competition. You can't go to a service provider and say, you are evil, you are doing the wrong thing. No, you must create the competition so that they know what to do. Look at the Salaula business. You can't go into the city market and say, you Salaula, I want you to change your price for your trousers, my jeans. You just allow other Salaula people to be there. And when they are all there, you find now jeans are selling at 10 kwacha. When there was only 1 or 2, they were selling at 50 kwacha. So competition does its thing. And that's what we need to do, is have strategic management of our economy to make sure at the end of the day, the consumer gets the best deal in terms of price and in terms of quality.
All right, we've come to the end of our program. It's 10:57 Central African time. Mr. Dodia, I would like to appreciate you having made an appearance on such a time as this when we're discussing challenges that we faced with at the hands of COVID-19.
I thank you so much, and I'm very grateful that you have allowed me to keep social distancing even here in the studio. There was no need for me to wear my mask,
Yeah.
but definitely I'll sanitize before I leave. Yes, thank you so much. I hope when we meet again, it will be under better circumstances, when we can say the coronavirus came in and it left, and as a nation, we still stand very, very strong. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, coming up is news. Then Chibo picks it up with today's edition